Hello everyone, my name is Olaf, or Omega Olaf, and we are here to talk a little bit about the Wagon Warlock that I reached top 20 legend with. So over here's the list. What we're going to do is we're going to briefly talk about the cards that make up the list and why I chose to include some of them. And then I'll play a few games with the deck so that you can get a bit of an understanding of how I like to play it. First of all, this is my first Hearthstone YouTube video that I'm making, so forgive any mistakes. And also, with regards to my play, I'm by no means a perfect player, so don't take my word as gospel. Find ways to experiment with both the list and with your play and see if things improve. So most of the what the list attempts to do is it attempts to get a meat wagon out, summon a portal for free, and with your minions costing 2 less, you should be able to play things like sea giants, faceless manipulators, and despicable dreadlords for very cheaply. And you could use the faceless manipulators to copy the summoning portals. You can also use the Zola to add it back to your hand. And the Glinda can make sure that your combo, especially with the Sea Giant, keeps going for a while. Besides that, there are some pretty normal control Warlock tools, and that's mainly what your early game looks like. It looks like a fairly standard control Warlock game. So double Coldbolt Librarian obviously is one of the best 1-drops in the game and can help you both draw into your combo more quickly and power up the Spellstone as well. Defile is a pretty necessary clear against most of the aggro out there. Hellfire is also still a very good clear and inclusion. And the Spellstone is also a standard control Warlock tool. It's pretty much the only live game we have, I think, besides the Death Knight, and so it's a very good inclusion as well. Besides that, most of these two elves here are in some way related to the combo. Phantom Militia can be played for 1 mana with a single summoning portal. So this is one of your most common combos against aggro. You play the meat wagon and you kill it off, and then if it's turn 5 or turn 6, you can play 5 to 6 Phantom Militias, and that pretty much kills off most aggro. Sometimes you can add a Sea Giant in there as well, since that one gets cheaper through both the Phantom Militias and the cost reduction from Summoning Portal. The Faceless Manipulator is one of the most versatile cards in the deck. It can often be used against control as a turn 5 giant as a follow-up to your tap mountain giant that you commonly play. Otherwise, it can be used to copy your summoning portal to set up a big Glinda turn. It can be used to copy your Despicable Dreadlord in preparation of Gul'dan. Yeah, it's a very versatile card, and you can use it in many different ways. The Dreadlord is both another threat that you can summon cheaply for your summoning portal. It's a star card against aggro, pretty much immediately wins you the game against all Paladin, and it gets resurrected by Gul'dan as well, so there's extra value in that. So copying these or getting these off of your Glinda is often very nice because you can get them back with Gul'dan as well. Sea Giant is obviously also part of the combo. they get reduced by 3 for each summoning portal, 1 from the summoning portal being on the field, and then 2 from the cost reduction itself. And as such, they can get very cheap very fast. With Glinda, you often play a bunch of 0 mana Sea Giants. Yeah, they're one of the best cards in the deck. Gul'dan is a fairly obvious inclusion for any control Warlock. It copies Despicable Dreadlord, Hooked Reaver, and Vulgar Homunculus in this list. And you can also copy the Dreadlord or the Reaver to get more value off of that. So those are pretty much all of the core cards. Summoning Portal is obviously, alongside Wagon, the combo itself, so I'm not explaining that inclusion. You might have noticed that I skipped over a few cards. Those are the non-core cards. They include 1 Coil, 1 Gnome Vulgar Homunculus, Tar Creeper, and Hooked Reaver. Those are really the non-core cards. You can kind of mix and match with these as you like. Plated Beetle is also a good inclusion. That was in my list for a while. And I eventually chose to cut it because I was coming up against more control than aggro. And Homunculus is slightly better against control because it can also power up the Spellstone and be resurrected by Gul'dan. Tar Creeper has been a mainstay in this list because I really like it against aggro, but it's totally cuttable. Same goes for Hooked Reaver. Hooked Reaver can be pretty clutch at times if you go below 15 health, but it's not too common of a scenario, and it's hard to see the opportunity cost of what other, especially more anti-aggro tools might have done for you in those situations. So they're totally cuttable, although I would prefer to keep at least 1 more demon in there for the Gul'dan. Just the 2 Despicable Dreadlords can be a little weak at times. Gnome Ferradu has not actually been as strong of an inclusion as I thought it would be. It's one of the first things you might think of as comboing with Crowskin and Portal to burn a bunch of your opponent's deck. But in the maybe 30 games I've played that Gnome Ferradu has been in the list, that combo hasn't actually paid off once. Still, it can be useful to burn a card in your opponent's deck, especially because there's quite a lot of combo-y control decks running around. Shudderwalk, Shaman, Taunt Druid, Cube Warlock, and all of these have some key cards that if you burn them, they can really help your win rate. For example, I burned a Shudderwalk the other day, and it pretty much automatically won me the game. Mortal Coils is pretty standard inclusion. I will say that it's also useful for cheaply activating your combo for the Wagon if your opponent only leaves a 3 attack minion up, which is moderately common, especially with Taunt Druid. They'll have something like the Ironwood Golem up, and you won't be able to kill off your own Wagon unless you combo it with Mortal Coil, and it's a fairly cheap activator in that sense. But those 5 cards are all one-ofs, probably because I don't necessarily know which ones are better than the other. I prefer to draw some of them over the other in certain situations. So you can definitely mix and match with those cards. And also possibly Plated Beetle is on that list as well. So that's a little bit about the list. Now let's queue up. I'll be playing maybe 3 games or something, and we will hope that we find a wide array of different opponents so that we can see how this deck plays out against different types of decks. One inclusion that I didn't talk about too much was Zola the Gorgon. She wasn't in my list initially, and your deck can work without her, but she has been really key. She can copy your summoning portals or giants so that you have more steam after your swing turn if you expect it to be, if you expect the tempo you create from that turn to be killed off. So we're facing a priest. Priest is generally not a very good matchup. There's quest priest, control priest, or mind blast priest, and combo priest. And out of those, combo priest might be the better one because they don't run psychic stream, and you can run away with the early tempo a little bit. But you are definitely afraid of their combo as well. So in this case, I'm definitely keeping Nosferatu and Mountain Giant, and I might keep Faceless Manipulator on the Mountain Giant as well. That's kind of the basic plan. Summoning Portal you generally don't keep because you want them off of the Meat Wagon and you don't want to pay the full price. And it's much worse if you have a double Meat Wagon, or rather double Summoning Portal that you can't summon off of your Meat Wagon anymore. Than the other way around. So I'm okay with drawing them, but I generally mulligan them away. So here, this is a pretty easy Cobalt Librarian turn. Generally, what we're going to be looking to do in the early turns is try to run the game away with early Mountain Giant into Faceless. That's the easiest way to beat the priests who, after turn 7, can generally Psychic Scream away your swing turns. So here I have the option of either Nosferatu or tap. Either way, I will have the Mountain Giant on 4 if I tap next turn. So I would prefer to tap now so as to not commit myself to tap next turn. So far we've seen that he likely doesn't have the Northshire Cleric. And the Star Creeper makes me think he's probably combo priest, which is fine. Our game plan is still pretty much the same of running away with the game. The only difference is that we are more afraid of his board now because we don't want it to get buffed up and kill us before we can tempo out the game. So here, this is a pretty clear Nosferatu turn, otherwise we have to pass. So that's not a great burn. And the Divine Hymn burn actually makes me think that he might still be a control priest. There's a possibility that I'm trading in here because of a possible Desk Breaker next turn. Yeah, and I actually think that's worth it. Either way, he will get that trade-off because of the one attack. So in this case, the Duskbreaker will also clear his own Tar Creeper, and if he heals it up, we can eventually use the Spellstone to deal with it as well. So this is a very easy Mountain Giant. Meat Wagon against these types of control decks generally comes after the Mountain Giant because you want to see if they can resist the early pressure through the Mountain Giant and Faceless plan. If they can, then they probably ate up a bunch of removal already and you're in a pretty good spot. But the Meat Wagon just takes longer to get going, which is especially bad in this matchup because we want to try to get him as low as possible before his turn 7 Psychic Scream. So in this case, we're just going to Giant Pass. Next turn, we plan to Faceless Manipulator it and try to get him as low as possible quickly. So he does have an answer, which is a shame. This means that the plan now probably changes a little bit because the plan of running away with the early tempo is clearly not going to work. So probably the Spellstone is the best play here. Because there are some good trades otherwise that I don't really want to give him. Another option is Despicable Dreadlord, trade them both in, but that still leaves up the 8/3, which I'm not too happy about. So probably we Spellstone this turn, and we meet Wagon next turn, and then we try to set up a board that's big enough for him to screen, but keep some resources in our hand as well. So with regards to the trades, I think the Mountain Giant's health is high enough that we can afford to trade here. If he spends another 2 mana healing up here, that's fine by us, and we can use that tempo. And if he doesn't, then we can kill it off next turn. Okay, Skill Worm is a card that I didn't play around adequately, so that might have been a mistake. Okay, so at this point we're probably looking at Meat Wagon. Yeah, so the question is tap Meat Wagon or Librarian Meat Wagon. I think probably tap Meat Wagon is better because after the Scream we want to keep more resources. So this is interesting. The Mountain Giant can't be removed on board, but given the Dustbreaker that might be in his hand, especially since he does have a dragon, he can just trade it, which I don't really like. So I'm gonna stick with the plan and get the Meat Wagon on. He might use some resources to remove the summoning portal as well. Okay. So he's going face. This is the type of situation where a Mortal Coil would be useful, as I discussed earlier. So now we probably do want to kill this off, which means a Defile might be a good play here. The only thing is that if I just trade Defile, it kills off the summoning portal immediately, which is not good. I can Cobalt Librarian, and then I have 1, 3, and 4, but I don't have the 2. So it seems like there's no great way to kill off the Meat Wagon right now, which means I'm just going to develop without it. Using the Hooked Reaver instead of the Sea Giant so that we do have a powerful turn. Didn't have enough time to think about the trades there, but I think what I'm worried about is a Dustbreaker, so a trade into the Mountain Giant and a trade into the Hooked Reaver and then the Dustbreaker, so the 2 attack would be good. Okay, so he's getting us pretty low. So we'll probably have to use the Spellstone at some point soon. We can use the Summoning Portal now, and that's probably correct. Because he's kind of putting us on a clock with the Shadow Reaper Anduin. So even though the portal is low now, this is still pretty much worth it. So I think we pretty much have to go all in here, even though that's not really what we want to do, because the Shadow Reaper Anduin is going to kill us soon if we don't. So the kind of slower game plan is not going to work. And as such, Now, I think it's worth it to play these out because we get to play the Sea Giant for cheap anyway. And he doesn't have the ability to kill us from 16 yet because that's at 10 mana. So we plan to use the Spellstone next turn to push through anything that he might set up right now. This is pretty all-in. If he has a Psychic Scream, we're pretty done. And he does, so we're in a really bad spot now, and we probably lose. I don't like the tap here because that means one Mind Blast and 1 2-mana spell even sets us up. So just Dreadlord Tar Creeper is the better play right now. You could use the Spellstone on your own minion, but that's a plan that's not going to win you the game in the long run. We still need to stick by our tempo plan. And so there's the second one. So now a single Mind Blast kills us. We're in a pretty and the 2-mana minion. So now it is worth considering just going Portal Spellstone. Yeah, probably the only way we win this is if we draw into Gul'dan really quickly and don't die beforehand. So I'm going to tap Portal Spellstone and just try to draw and hope that the next top deck pretty much, or maybe the one after, is Gul'dan. Otherwise, we probably lose, and we might already lose here if he has the Mind Blast. Okay, he doesn't. But clearly he's bringing us quite low. So probably 11 is already enough, because 1 Mind Blast, 1 2-mana spell does it. Yeah, we already drew both Spellstones, so that's all of our life gain besides the Death Knight gone. I'm just going to play these out and not tap, and hope that the next draw is a Death Knight and that he doesn't have lethal here, but it's looking unlikely. And there we go. So I think it's possible to go back there and look at that turn 6, I think specifically, where I tapped into the Giant and chose to play the Meat Wagon still instead as a possible misplay. That's something worth considering. But either way, that type of Priest is a pretty unfavored matchup. As I highlighted, against control in general, your game plan is to go tap Mountain Giant into Faceless as a Q block remnant, if you will, and then after that start setting up big swing turns with your summoning portals and Sea Giants and so on. Generally, you just use the Phantom Militia by itself without the summoning portals, because the portals are used for bigger minions, but using one portal with the Phantom Militia can be fine as well, with the idea of getting the Zola to copy your other portal. Priest in particular is a bad matchup because they have the Psychic Scream and the Shadow Reaper Enduin to kill off your big boards, and especially the Psychic Scream, as we saw there. The same goes for Quest Warrior, who has both Draw and Warpath that can be pretty annoying. But most other control decks are not great at clearing entire very large boards. So generally you're in a better spot against most other control decks. especially those that don't have a very fast game plan of their own. So we're up against the Paladin. We're definitely mulling away the Glinda in one Phantom Militia. It's worth considering whether or not to keep the other Phantom Militia, and I probably would if I had a Mead Wagon in my hand, but I don't. We're mulligan heavily for Coil, Defile, Hellfire, and Despicable Dreadlord at this point, as well as Tar Creeper. And so we find the Coil, that's good. You're probably going to see me tap a surprising amount here. That's because getting to those plays and clearing their board is much more important than being high on life against an Odd Pally. Odd Pally doesn't have a lot of burst. They only really have the Vine Cleaver, which you can set up taunts against. So generally, for example, here I'm heavily considering tapping to try and find answers rather than playing Nomfradu. I think it's still worth it to play the Nomfradu with the idea of going Coil tap next turn. So that's good. That's a bunch of his possible burst gone. So we're probably going to Coil this turn. Sea Giant is a good draw. We can generally play that for pretty cheap. Mountain Giant doesn't matter as much. So here we do tap. So the Summoning Portal can be used with the Phantom Militia once we find ourselves getting pressured a lot. Generally, I'm just clearing away the 1/1s because the best way for him to kill me is by creating a bunch of 1/1s and then leveling up. So that's good. So the question is right now, do we just tap or do we already Hellfire? Considering that Hellfires are only clear here, I am actually going to tap. We are not really pressured significantly right now. He only has 6 damage on the board. And as I said, life total is not a significant factor. Excuse me. So now we can just set up for this Hellfire right now, probably. Although, yeah. So especially considering that we drew the second one, just playing this first one is fine. So we're probably hoping to play Portal, Militia, and possibly the Sea Giants next turn if we can. That will probably shut him off pretty heavily. But we'll see if we have the mana to do that. Yep. Okay. So this reduces it by 3. The Sea Giants go down to 2. So we should be able to play them. So yeah. Only 2 Phantom Militias isn't too great, but I am starting to feel a little bit pressured here. It's possible that I was a little bit too greedy with that first Hellfire, but we will see how it goes. So this is probably, yeah. So we'll see if he gets to clear the Summoning Portal. If not, now we have quite a lot of options. We can play a bunch of Phantom Militias and copy a Sea Giant. We can play a bunch of Phantom Militias and copy his Stormwind Champion. So we can play 3 Phantom Militias and the Faceless, which is probably worth it. We still have the Hellfire to take care of some amount of board afterwards, and we can probably put him on somewhat of a clock as well. So we're going to do that. So we're definitely trading here. The question is whether we do this. Given that he doesn't have a lot of charge minions, and this sets us up for lethal. Oh, well, there's the win anyway. Our Paladin is an insanely good matchup. I still have yet to lose a game against them. What we didn't get are Defile or our Despicable Dreadlords, which are the two most powerful cards against our Paladin, and we still managed to win that game in the end, which just shows how many different winning conditions the stack has against aggro. We have clearly the Phantom Militia there did some work and really helped us pull away. But we have Sea Giants, we have Despicable Dreadlords, Defiles, Hellfires. So we're generally pretty able to run away with things. So we get the Paladin again, which is great. It also means that I probably will be playing one more game after this, so that we get a little bit more variety. So the Sea Giant is worth considering, but I think we ultimately want to be looking for our clears much more so than the Sea Giant. So we're looking for Despicable Dreadlord especially. That's pretty much the best card against our Paladin, and there we are. So if he plays something like Lost in the Jungle or Icarus Veteran, we're just going to coil it. And next turn we're probably tapping as well. Yeah, our plan is pretty much the same as before. Try to be greedy with the clears, and then set up a board of our own that contests there as well, either with Phantom Militias or Despicable Dreadlords. Don't pay too much attention to the life total, and instead try to get them to commit into clears more, especially if you don't have a lot of them. Right now we only have the one Defile, which means I'm definitely not playing it this turn. We're not threatened significantly enough. The Hellfire makes it more of a consideration, but still we want to be greedy with our clears. Probably playing the single Phantom Militia is the best play here. We can't tap because we overdraw. We could coin Hooked Reaver, but Hooked Reaver actually has a chance of becoming a 7/7, and we can maybe copy them, for example. That seems like a good secondary game plan if we go low. So I'm just going to play the one Phantom Militia. We still have the other for the combo if we need to, and we have some clears to back this up if he is very efficient with the trading, for example, a Raid Leader of a Blessing or a Blessing of Might or something like that. Okay, so in this case, we have a few plays worth considering. We could tap Defile, which leaves only a 2/1. We could Spellstone the Raid Leader, which leaves the 2/1 and a 2/4. We could Hellfire, which also leaves only the 2/1. So probably Defile is a better play than Hellfire because we get to tap, and we don't take any damage ourselves. Generally, Hellfire is also just a worse clear here, so that's something worth considering, especially when we have the mana to play it now. But given that we don't really have anything to do with our hand right now, I want to tap to get more of our either answers or ways to contest the board, and then set up the Defile. So we might use the other Hellfire in an attempt to power up the Spellstones pretty soon, but we're not looking great right now. And it's, yeah, we're not in a great spot. It's possible that we go Militia, coin Militia here, but given that we just draw the other Hellfire, we can safely use this one. We also go low enough for the Hooked Reaver. Yep. So this is pretty standard. We're most afraid of level up right now. Okay, so that's a good draw as well. So we're probably going to go coin Tar Creeper and either Spellstone or Hook Reaver. Because we really want to play 2 cards right now. Those are the powerful ones. So if he levels up, so I'm going to play the Hook Reaver. This isn't great because of the plan that we had to get them cheap and copy them maybe if we draw into the portal, but given that we have the Phantom Militia, we're probably just going to use the portal with the Phantom Militia, so that won't be a problem. Sunkeeper Tarim is something that I didn't consider, and maybe should have more seriously. So we're actually in a pretty bad spot right now. We probably want to Spellstone, and then next turn we will Hellfire Spellstone as well. And we hope we draw into some of our key cards as soon as possible. So with the Spellstone, we want to take some of the power away from the board. I'm still heavily considering tapping, even though we go low, because he would need 3 extra damage, which is a threshold that he doesn't really have except for Vine Cleaver. I think probably given the Vine Cleaver being fairly plausible right now, I'm going to choose not to tap. And the Phantom Militia is also somewhat worrisome. I'm going to keep it in my hand because we're relying on a portal into Militia at this point, probably. Yep, so that wouldn't kill us. That does kill us, though. So we're dead. This is a shame. This is actually my first odds to out Paladin. It's possible that I wasn't greedy enough with the clears. It's also possible that I should have gone for that Hellfire instead of the File. Things could have looked a lot different. But also we didn't draw into the Summoning Portal, which combos so well with the Phantom Militia, or the Despicable Dreadlord, which is the best card against the Alt Paladin. So yeah, it's a shame we didn't win that one, but our game plan against aggro remains mostly the same, and sometimes you just lose them. So this is the final game, and we're playing against the Shaman. So Shaman has generally been Shudderwalk Shaman, which, as we know, we have the plan of Tap Tap Mountain Giant. Kobold Librarian aids us in this plan. He gets some early tempo as well. Tar Creeper is worth considering since we can't tap on turn 3. So we go Librarian, tap, Tar Creeper into 4 mana Mountain Giant is a real possibility. And it's also good against Even Shaman in case it's that. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and keep it, but I'm not sure if that's correct. Okay, so it is Even Shaman. Even Shaman is generally a good matchup for us. Although the mulligan inconsistency makes it difficult. For example, keeping that Mountain Giant was definitely not good for our situation against even Shaman. Our game plan is pretty much the same as against Paladin. We're going to tap pretty heavily, try to get our key cards as quickly as possible, and clear their board as much as possible. So our next few turns are probably looking like Tar Creeper, Hellfire, Spellstone, things like that. The difference between even Shaman and Paladin, although I haven't faced too many even Shamans, I must say, the difference is that even Shaman can put more pressure on our life total, even after we've stabilized. They have things like Alakir, that, or Argent Commander in combination with Flame Tongue Totem that can hurt us quite a bit. So here, this is actually a pretty difficult turn already. We could Tar Creeper and Hellfire next turn, or we can Hellfire now. So next turn is either Shadow Knight Chain Gang, in which case Hellfiring next turn is great, or Corpse Taker, in which case Tar Creepering next turn is much better. So I'm actually going to Hellfire now, because I'm afraid of the Corpse Taker next turn, and want to have the Tar Creeper to protect in that case. Okay, so he just plays Juggler Totem. This is pretty good for us. Spellstone is worth considering here, but I'm liking the Tar Creeper much better. Stops the Knife Juggler. With a little bit of luck, we might actually be able to play the Mountain Giant next turn, furthering our own game plan as well, and putting some counter pressure on. But let's see what he does first. So we have already used our only clear, which is a little bit frightening. That's probably Earthen Might over there. Yep. So we don't have anything to clear this board right now. So I'm just going to remove the pressure through this, or some of the pressure through the Spellstone. Try to draw into Despicable Dreadlord or Defile. But it's possible that we were not greedy enough with that Hellfire, since it's our only one. So right now we could get a single free Sea Giant if we play double Summoning Portal. But besides that, we can't play anything else. If we do that, it's worth considering to just play Glinda right now. But we don't even have that good of a follow-up to that, even if we do get it. Yeah. So we probably have to tap here, trying to draw into Phantom Militia or Defile as soon as possible. And I'm probably going to Giant after that. So we really need to survive this turn. The Phantom Militia is a great draw. So we most likely portal into Triple Militia Sea Giant next turn, if we're not dead, which we might be, given how quickly he made those attacks. No, actually. Okay. Yeah. So Portal into Triple Militia is definitely the play here. And we just hope that that's enough to keep us alive. This loses against Alakir, I think. Or it's pretty close at least. Yeah, it loses against Alakir. But it's yeah, it was pretty much the best play we could make at that point. Right now we still don't have a lot of things to do next turn, even with these militias up. So we're still in a pretty bad spot. We have 16 damage, which is not enough to do anything. Okay, well that's a great draw. So we're going to refill the board with militias and trade in as much as possible. These sea giants and mountain giants, it's worth considering having them go face, but it's definitely not worth it in this situation. I'm also not going to tap in the case of some fire elemental shenanigans. Still, fire elemental into Merkspark Eel kills me, but it's a pretty slim chance. Okay, so he has a sea giant as well. But we have a pretty good trade on that. Let's see where he goes with that. Okay. Yep. Okay. So this is the point where we want to put on some counter pressure as well. We're definitely cooldowning next turn. So it's we could play a bunch of Despicable Dreadlords. We need to make sure that we don't die to Alakir still. It's pretty plausible that that card is Alakir. It could also be Hagatha. So I'm going to trade in here for sure. I am just going to make 2 Despicable Dreadlords. So it was worth considering trading this off, but ultimately it's not worth it right now. And I'm still heavy on the control the board plan, so that's what we're doing here. I actually forgot that the Despicable Dreadlords kill things off right there, so that was a mistake on my part. I could have gone face with one or two of those, and I would have probably traded one of the Phantom Militias in. So we get double hexed, which is fine. We probably still go down this turn just to stabilize us. We have plenty of steam for after that. We have taunt set up. I'm going to trade this in. So this was a pretty late stabilization, clearly, and we got lucky with those Phantom Militia draws. We might not have won that otherwise, but that shows the game plan against aggro once again. I would have liked to have played some more games against control, but the control priest game was somewhat representative of how you generally play against them, with the early mountain giants turns and trying for fairly big swing turns. Against other controls, as I said, there's no Psychic Scream except for the Brawl. So generally, you're much more happy to set up a big swing turn against those other decks than I was to try it against Priest. So that's a little bit of the list and the gameplay. I think we ended up going 2-2 there. That's how it works. Feel free to try some other things out with some of those cards. See how it works for you, and let me know what you get. I hope that this was useful and or informative, and please let me know if you have any feedback at all. And thanks for watching.